There comes a time in every anime fan's life where they ask themselves one simple question: could I create an anime? And 99.9% of the time, that answer is going to be a pretty straightforward no. Until now. This is why I think Bâan is a creative masterpiece. For those of you who don't know, Gigguk, or Grant, yes, I know I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, is an anime YouTuber who recently released his very own animated short film. As you can imagine, this sort of career trajectory is pretty much unfathomable for the average person, let alone any tuber. And it's pretty poetic that the guy who's been talking about anime on YouTube for the last 15 years has completed the greatest character arc imaginable. I'll be honest, going into this, my expectations were pretty low. From the initial trailer, I was expecting a pretty generic romance isekai, set in a typical fantasy universe, with a small part of me really doubting Gigguk's ability to tell a compelling story with such little prior experience and an incredibly limited runtime. But boy, was I wrong. Bâan truly is a masterpiece, and it's the culmination of every single piece of Gigguk's very being and lived experience being laid out on the screen for us, the viewers, to enjoy. Going into this film, I really had no idea what to expect. Gigguk might be well known for his anime hot takes and famous abridged series, but I just wasn't too sure how all of that would translate over to the big screen. However, the title of the film, Bâan, was something that piqued my interest, with the word itself being the Thai word for home. And it's this subjective idea of home that's intelligently used as a key narrative beat throughout the film. Looking back at Gigguk's prior conversation with Dr. K from August 2013, it's pretty clear that this philosophical question of what is home is something that's always played on his mind.
You're like, okay, I don't feel at home in Thailand. So that's your answer, right? It doesn't mean that you need to make yourself fit in Thailand, or you need to make yourself fit in Britain, or you need to make yourself fit in Japan. If none of those things feel right to you, that's not your home.
It really is so beautiful to see this type of philosophical question be at the forefront of this film's plot and emotional moments, and it's clearly something that really weighs on Gigguk's mind a lot. The film begins with our two main characters, Daichi and Rin, searching for their new home, as they're both struggling to find their place in their respective original birthplaces. We're shown intertwined clips of Daichi travelling to Utania and Rin travelling to Earth. Both sets of scenes are framed in direct parallel to each other, so that narratively it seems like our characters are about to go on their journeys at the exact same time. They're both on a philosophical journey to find themselves, gain independence, and figure out what their place in the world is. And it's here that we truly begin to see Gigguk's self-expression of his lived experience. It's a well-known fact that Gigguk is part Thai, and grew up in the UK before moving to Japan. And I'd imagine that he drew on some of these experiences to help flesh out the internal struggles of our main characters. Even if you've never lived as a foreign person in a different country, this feeling of isolation and lack of identity is something you probably have found yourself contemplating, especially when you're growing up. Both Daichi and Rin are used to portray different aspects of the spiritual and physical journeys someone can explore while trying to find their place in the world, and this is something that instantly hit home for me. We're shown how both characters navigated the beginning of their respective journeys, with Daichi seemingly fitting in so effortlessly with the Utanian people and their culture, which is in direct contrast to Rin, who is struggling to adapt to her new environment. Essentially, we're being shown two sides of the same coin. We find out through Daichi's flashbacks that he never really learned to stand on his own 2 feet, and had no idea what to do with his life back home on Earth. He's pretty much travelled to Utania on a whim, in the hopes that it will help him take control of his new life and carve out a better future for himself. We're also shown that cooking is important to him, even though it's not something he often used to do, and it's this love for food that helps him connect with the Utanians and integrate into their society. For a lot of us, food is a social experience, It's a pretty straightforward conversation starter and is often one of the most effective ways of getting to know someone. Given Gigguk's Thai roots and the importance of cuisine to him and his culture, I thought it was pretty fitting that this would be the catalyst that pushes Daichi to grow as a character and helps him to connect with the Utanian people on a deeper level. But just like in our own lives, when things are going too good, there's often always an unexpected twist of fate on its way. We witness his entire world get turned upside down when he stumbles across a baby Rin who has just lost her entire family while they tried to protect the sacred Utanian dragon ritual from being attacked. Now, the character parallels have come full circle, and this moment blew my mind, which was highlighted nicely by the two worlds colliding visuals. My expectations were certainly subverted here, because I really did assume that these two stories were happening in tandem, and that they were both destined to meet each other and become future lovers, as is so often the case in slice of life isekai. Honestly, major props to Gigguk here for not making his story generic, and somehow fitting a pretty pivotal plot twist into an 18-minute short film. Maybe it was just fate, or a mere coincidence, but it's this encounter that changes the trajectory of both their lives forever. Daichi's life used to feel so meaningless without a clear goal, but now he has one, to raise and care for Rin, the orphan. This newfound self-belief in himself and sense of purpose ends up finding him when he needed it the most. And just like Dr. K said to Gigguk, there is no perfect plan or system that we can put in place in order to make sure we live a happy and fulfilling life.
A lot of times before you have kids and before you have a home, you're like looking for stuff, but it's kind of, you're trying to figure this out with like a blindfold. Like, I think a big experience of life is that your kids will carve out the home for you. So like a lot of times, especially when it comes to kids, like we think that we have to set everything up before the kid comes along, but I mean, the kid is going to screw everything up anyway. Like, there's just no way that you can adequately prepare to be a parent. You just can't do it.
We just need to trust in the process and let shit happen. Now that we've gotten a better understanding and perspective of our two main characters, Gigguk cleverly brings us back to the present, where Rin's life on the outside isn't going exactly as planned. The contrasting parallels between Daichi's time on Utania versus Rin's on Earth are only further highlighted by the fact that Rin refuses to admit defeat and return home to her father, and no doubt feels like a burden to him after everything that's happened and all he does for her. And as someone still living at home with his parents in their late 20s, I can admit this really hit hard. Feeling like a burden or a disappointment to the people who've given up their entire lives to look after you is probably one of the worst feelings in the world, to the point that we often go out of our way to seek independence and almost become prideful in the fact that we're no longer a liability when we do eventually leave home. We're shown that although Rin is able to find a job and make some friends for herself, she's forced to suppress a lot of her Utanian magic and personality, which is an essential part of who she is as a person. The world outside of Euthania isn't really built for someone with magical powers and this type of identity, and it's this culture shock that really begins to affect her as she struggles to find herself. Even though she now has the independence she so desperately desired, part of her still feels lost. Gigguk uses Rin to show us that sometimes things just don't work out the way we might have hoped. Even if certain things do go in our favour, like moving out, it doesn't necessarily mean that we will find true happiness. I'd imagine that this is the sort of culture shock that most people have experienced if they've ever tried to live abroad, and it's definitely something that would leave you feeling extremely lost in yourself, which is no doubt something Gigguk himself has had to constantly deal with throughout his life. When Rin set off on her journey of self-discovery, she was full of hopes and dreams, which have now begun to dwindle over time as she begins to ruminate on her decisions to leave home. And at this point in the story, Rin is clearly in dire need of some love and support. And thankfully, her auntie An has been keeping a close eye on her, and is able to provide her with some much needed words of comfort. With the help of a voice recording from Daichi, An is able to reassure Rin that it's okay to admit defeat, and that she shouldn't be too hard on herself regarding her current dilemma. This whole scene is pretty poetic, considering An is also the Utanian that helped Daichi integrate into their society. And the entire message of Bâan and the idea of home comes full circle here. Just like any great parent would, Daichi explains to Rin that he misses her deeply, and that it's okay to return home to him without feeling like she's let herself down. Things just don't always work out the way we'd hoped, and who better to hear that from than the man that had his whole world turned upside down for the better because of her. It's little moments like this that make Daichi and Rin's story feel so intertwined. There is no stronger bond in this world than the one between a parent and their child, and I can just tell that Gigguk drew a lot of inspiration from his own family life here. Bâan really is a creative masterpiece in multiple aspects, and I hope that this video has highlighted some of them. I think most people probably went into this film not knowing what to expect, and ended up being blown away by all the love and care that was put into it. Gigguk has certainly exceeded most people's expectations, and has really made this project come to life by pouring so much of his heart and soul into it. And I really do hope that in the near future he's given the opportunity to further flesh out this beautiful world of Bâan.